What's up, everybody? We on the Northwest Jukebox Podcast with James The Juggernaut featuring Ready Ron Beats today. How you doing, Ron?
So far, so good. What's happening?
Yes, sir. So let's jump into it, man. Where are you from?
Oh, originally Brooklyn, New York.
Tell us about that. What was that like?
It depends. I mean, keep it real with you. New York City itself is the port city. That every single culture except for Mexico, every single culture from around the world entered before migrating to the rest of the U.S. So you ended up either very ignorant or very cultured. I chose to be cultured because I grew up with pretty much everybody.
Okay. So what was it like growing up in New York? Because that was what, 70s, 80s, 90s?
Keep going. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, before you got into music, what was New York like?
I came from a very tight knit family. So even though we didn't have a lot, we had a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of love and we're a very, very close family. So
Okay. So you had a lot of siblings?
um, my mother had five children. Actually, my mother had four children. And
Okay.
then met my father, and here I am. Now, prior to me, because my dad was a military man, he had a family prior. So I'll just roughly say there's about nine of us all together. Because he had a family prior, and we don't do the word step. We do brother and sister. So,
Right, right, right. So, and you guys all keep in communication?
oh, 100%.
For sure. So, before we agree to do this interview, there's some things that we'll just kind of leave to the side. But can you tell me how you got into music, at what age, and who was doing music at that time?
So that's kind of a loaded question, and I'll explain what I mean. Because there
Sure.
was no there was no getting into music. There was music always involved in the home.
Okay.
There was always music involved in the home. And being the youngest of five siblings, each and every member had a different taste in music. And so I had the opportunity to absorb all of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whether it be blues, whether it be jazz, whether it be soul, whether it be real R&B or rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to be exposed to all of this. Plus, being in New York, you're hearing all types of different sounds all the time, everywhere.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine what that would be like. And so, I mean, obviously, rap didn't just pop out like it's a 40 or 50-year-old genre at this point, but before,
Pause. It's older than that. It's just being recorded, and I don't mean like record or song wise. It's older than 50 years. I'm just saying on the record, it's 50 years old. But before the radios, before any of that, or the rest of the world in the country heard it, it was being done. Whether it was spoken word poetry, whether it was revolutionary poetry, you know what I mean, like the last poets or Gil Scott Heron, it was always there, but it became a different form of rhythmic American poetry.
okay. So, what were some of the first rappers? Again, so when you entered into making music, as you said, music was always in your life. When you became a producer, rapper, or however you started DJ, who were because you grew up in the heart of hip hop.
Yeah, one hundred
So,
percent.
so around that time, who was prominent and who did you rub elbows with that we may not know?
So no matter where you go, no matter where you're from, you never know who's gonna pop off.
Right.
And we have a lot of community events, whether it be indoor or outdoor, block parties, social events and stuff like that. And you'd be real surprised that some of those people are the ones that are now considered pioneers and stuff like that, like the Funky Four Plus One More, the Crash Crew, Bambata, Flash, and them. Because most of the time, this stuff was being done outdoors in the parks. What they were doing was they were hooking their DJ up to the city's electrical system, and they were just doing their thing. The DJs would play, whoever was rapping would come out and rap. And I mean, I'm not like a corny name dropper type of guy. Let's just say I've experienced sharing moments with some people who are now considered hip hop pioneers prior to, the Def Jam era, and I'm talking the Sugar Hill era before this shit was even on records.
Right.
Or no, there was some that was recorded, but never made radio play. You just heard it in the neighborhoods or on cassettes. So
Okay. Okay. So, and what, and like, what decade was this? Like, was this like 80s, 90s?
we're talking about late '70s, early '80s.
Okay.
Because a
And
lot
at
of
this,
people.
and at this time, you were how old?
Oh shit, I was a preteen.
Okay. So like 12, 13, 11.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say
Okay.
that.
Okay. So you basically grew up with hip hop.
100%.
That's awesome. So 11, 12, 13 years old, all this is happening. Some guys are older, some guys are probably your age, because hip hop is a pretty young genre, even it being 50, you know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
do you feel that within the last 50 years with this genre being as young as it is, even though it's hit a mile mark with 50, um did you anticipate seeing a lot of people that were working back then become who they are now? Now I know you just mentioned a corny, not wanting to be a corny name dropper, but I mean we're talking, Grandmaster Flash, we're talking Kumo D, we're talking Busy B, we're talking, Big Daddy Kane, we're talking, like all those guys. I mean, all those guys were, dude. I'm 30. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So like that was,
we're talking Spoonie G and Super Rhyme like I said, I mentioned, the Funky Four plus one more. I mentioned the Crash Crew, and
yeah.
these were groups that they never got national spotlight,
Okay.
but the respect that they have is incredible. Now, to answer your question, I'm gonna say yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, I expected to see them, move forward the way that they move forward, but no, you know, um, not like the way that it did,
Okay.
because there was such a big push during that time. It was such a big push, especially after Sugar Hill Gang.
Right.
There was a big push, but there
Well,
were people that
and they did Rappers Delight, right?
they did Rappers Delight,
Okay.
but there were people that were doing it before them. They just needed something clean cut. And let's clear the record up. Rapper's Delight is not the first record that had rap on it, rap on it that had radio play. That was not
Who
the first record.
who
In the
was?
same in the same year before them, there was a funk band called the Fatback Band that featured a guy named King Tim III. That was the very first that you consider hip hop rap that got radio play. At the end of the year, toward the end of the year, is when Sugar Hill Gang dropped.
Got you. And
And
what
if
the rec
anybody wants, and if anybody wants to challenge me, you can Google it.
and what their record was just more popular?
Um, it was more rap based.
Okay.
Sugar Hill
Okay.
Gang was more rap based, where the Fatback Band was really a funk band. They were really a funk band, and it was a great song.
Okay.
It was a great
So
song.
yeah, but getting into, so being around that, so what did you dive into first? Were you, because you've done a plethora of work, right? So were you a DJ first? Were you a producer first? Were you a rapper first? And what got you into that first position?
Okay, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
nobody just did one thing.
Okay.
Nobody did just one thing. We were all amazed at the DJs, and everybody wanted to try DJing. And then when the MCs, let's just say rappers, because there's a difference. When the
Right.
MCs started, really pushing, you always wanted to try a little of this. I was always one of those that liked to be on the technical side of things. I like the music. I like the whole time invested into going from one turntable to another in order to create one sound. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I had cousins who DJ'd. I had a brother who DJ'd, and so like I said, I was always around it. So I did a little of this, I did a little of that, I did a little of this, I did a little of that. I even at one point I was really I wrote graffiti. Used to break dance the whole nine because hip hop, the culture itself,
Right.
it's more than just one thing. It's a whole culture. It's a whole culture.
So kind of fast forwarding to 90s, early 90s, you know, we were seeing the mid 90s, we were seeing the
The evolution.
no, yes, but I guess it's like from what I know, right? Hip hop was very like, you know, you had like the KRS One, the Kumo D's. It was very battle based, right? With the MCs. Am I correct on that?
Well, yes and no. It was very originality based. Like now,
Okay.
the way this everybody sounds the same nowadays. Same spit style, same type of beat, same this, same that.
Right,
No,
right,
it
right,
was
right, right. No, I get that. But
so
what I'm saying,
it
but
was
with these, no, go ahead. Sorry, sorry.
it was very braggadocious, believe it or not.
Yeah,
Battle based, yeah. But but believe it or not, hip hop was almost like the news. It was almost like the news, like when Melly Mel said broken glass everywhere, people pissing on the station, just don't care. It was a way of passing the information on of what we had lived through and what we experienced. Even though now, it's a whole it's 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 such a I don't know, man. It's not really I hate to say this, but it's not really a good thing.
yeah,
It's kind of the situation is very sad because of how the industry is controlled because people forget it's not just for the love of the music. When they say the music industry, they're talking the business side, you
the
know,
money.
and not just the money, but who's really in control of what and what direction it's going, you know, and especially nowadays when you don't, I mean, something was said a long time ago. It was a song that said video killed the radio show, right? Because I remember tuning in to Mr. Magic or 92 K2U, back in New York, just to hear. And then when the video shows started coming out, people were more focused on what was visual. Now with the era of the internet and everything, it's crazy. And there's a good thing and there's a bad thing about that too, because artists aren't really getting paid the way they used to because now it's controlled. The industry itself is controlled. You don't have the big independents like you used to, the independent companies. And now that the majors are pretty much in control of everything, you don't get the variety. You don't get the variety because now I was telling somebody I just did a podcast with I did the Chop It Up podcast with Sos Dior, and I told him that now the only DJs that are actually playing music that they want to play are college radios,
Yeah.
where the majors are given a list of what to play over and over and over again. And so you are not getting the variety that you normally would get back then.
Okay. So where do you think that started? When do you think that started?
Ooh, ooh, that's another loaded question because people can even Google some of the stuff that I'm talking about. Like there there's a memo about how the day hip hop changed, where they crossed, where they wanted to control and make sure that it worked side by side with the private prison systems and everything.
Right.
Um, it started changing in the late '90s.
Okay.
It started really changing in the late '90s because at some point Viacom bought BET. You know who Viacom is, right?
No.
Viacom, I believe, is the company that owns MTV and VH1.
Okay.
So when they bought out BET, Black entertainment television wasn't owned by black people anymore. And the first show that they got rid of right away was The Basement with Big Tigger. Now, Big Tigger was really good. Now, MTV had a rap show too. It was Yo MTV Raps, which was cool, but they got rid of that. So
Yeah.
Big Tigger used to invite artists, interview them, put them in the booth. It
Yeah.
didn't matter whether you were from New York, whether you were from California, whether you were from West Africa, whether you were from Germany. He just, you got variety. And it all changed once they got rid of that because now Viacom is in control
Mm.
of what's being spoon fed to the masses. So once you eliminate that show, now you're in control of spoon feeding poison. You're only
Yeah.
hearing one style or one sound and this and that, and you're missing out on other good quality MCs and hip hop music. That's when the whole shit changed, where now the women, it all has to be sexually related, and the men, it all had to be either, you're violent or you're selling drugs. And you did have that in 90s hip hop, but a lot of times they were, in their stories, they were telling you, I was doing this to get out of the situation. I was doing this to get my mother out of the projects and get her a house. And I found a way to get out of it myself and become legal. And then they
Right.
just started focusing on just the one thing.